Hello, everyone. I am Luke Reinhardt. Welcome to Closing the Gap, a podcast dedicated to your growth. Brought to you by Wellspring Coaching Services and hosted by myself and my wife, Katie. You know, people have gaps that prevent them from growing. Our goal is to empower you to close those gaps by increasing your awareness, confidence, and clarity. Join us today as we help you close the gap between where you are and where you want to be. All right, season 1, episode 8.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be talking about compassion and curiosity. This is two important values that you've come up with.
Yes.
Let's talk about it a little bit. Why compassion and curiosity?
Well, I guess it's one of those things as a parent you're sort of thinking, because we have 3 children, and I'm thinking, what do I most want the kids to leave the house with? What character virtues, because we can't teach them everything. We don't have time to do all that. And if I had to distill down what I consider probably the 2 greatest virtues or 2 most important character traits that I want them to leave home with, I would say compassion and curiosity. Yeah.
So I guess we need to get a better understanding of what compassion and curiosity are. So
Sure.
Let's start with curiosity.
Are you curious about
I'm curious about curiosity.
Okay, so let's see. I wrote down the official definition is a strong desire to know or learn something. And I kind of think of it as inquisitiveness, too. So someone who would be highly curious would be an investigator, in a sense. They're asking questions. They want to dig deeper. There's a bit of archaeology going on there. I want to access history. I want to access the past. I want to figure out how this works. There's a famous quote with Albert Einstein. I probably won't get it word for word, but basically he says, I'm not super clever. I'm not extremely intelligent. I'm just passionately curious. And so it's that kind of mindset. It's sort of a scientific mindset. Like, I really do want to understand this better, and I really do want to just kind of get below the surface.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I feel like, too, if you maintain that posture of curiosity, it's very hard to, how would you say, elevate yourself and continually elevate yourself. Because as you're curious, you start to understand some things are going well and some things aren't going well. And if I can stay curious about how my behavior is impacting others, about how my behavior is impacting myself, about how A plus B equals C, or maybe sometimes B plus C equals D. If I'm always sort of curious about what those equations are in my life and what's going on around me, it keeps you humble and it keeps you moving forward in a really expansive way, I would say.
Would you say that, from what you're explaining, curiosity could keep you humble if you're curious enough about the right things?
Yes, true.
But I would think it could also make you prideful. It could puff you up a little bit.
How so?
Well, when you are curious, let's just say about knowledge.
Yes.
And how things work or whatever it may be, and you're always learning and always gaining knowledge in those areas that you could probably get puffed up as well. If you're curious about those things, but then not the other things, like you're saying, like how that knowledge or my knowing may affect other people in communication, or how we relate to one another, the dynamics, social dynamics.
That's true.
Curiosity in those ways. So I guess there's got to be different levels of curiosity.
Different applications, I would say, too.
Which would probably just require a different level of awareness as well. You have to be aware that the things that you do say and the way that you do act and how how you tend to just carry on with others socially, it does have an effect on other people.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And I think you're right. There's not a straight line trajectory from curiosity to humility. Mm-hmm. But it's definitely something that, if pursued, it's hard to kind of get to a place where you're like, I got this perfect. Because there's always a way to improve, mm-hmm. and there's always something to dig a little bit more at, and there's always something to learn in every situation. And when you think about it, like in terms of leadership, I sort of, when I look to other leaders, one of the things that I'm always looking for in them is a sense of curiosity, mm-hmm. because I want to know that they don't think they have all the answers.
Right.
I really do, because if they do, then there's really no growth that's going to happen. Mm-hmm. I mean, we know that from self-development trainings, and even in the martial arts world, our other business, we know that if you're not staying curious about how this move creates this scenario, which mm-hmm. creates that scenario, or how this decision creates this opportunity or shuts down this opportunity. I mean, if you're not looking for those things and you're not aware of how things sync together, then you're really you're closing down so much, mm-hmm. really.
Yeah, and I feel like two things, I guess. One mm-hmm. is that what you just said right there was it even just takes a level of humility to be curious.
Absolutely, yes.
So curiosity can lead to humility.
Yes.
But it also takes a certain level of humility just to be curious.
Exactly, yes.
To realize, oh, I don't know everything. How does this work?
Yes.
I don't have all the answers.
Right.
Let me research this a little bit.
Yeah.
But then too, this could be a sidebar, I guess, but it includes curiosity, because mm-hmm. I feel like all things from our faith perspective, all things are created good, but can be perverted.
Yes.
Or abused
right.
for misuse.
Twisted.
Twisted. So mm-hmm. Curiosity definitely being one of those things where it's when curiosity is placed in the right space, mm-hmm. it's going to lead to things like humility and a knowledge that could be very useful to other people and serve other people very well through your curiosity.
Yeah.
But then it could also lead to pride, and mm-hmm. it could do bad things to people.
Totally.
But that's everything.
Right. Well, you bring up the point. So with curiosity, it's expansive. I think of it as expansive. I would even maybe say, like yang-like, or it's outward moving, and there's a level of risk to it. Mm-hmm. There's the phrase, curiosity killed the cat, and that's because you step in a little further and you can get trapped or you can get hurt. But that there is a value to taking those steps, and that's what I think is worth cultivating, is the idea that every great inventor started with a level of curiosity. All great leaders, as we were just talking about, they've had a level of curiosity about what's going on in their world, mm-hmm. and however big or small that world is, whether it's in their company or whether it's in their county or their city or their state or their country. They've started with, hey, what's going on here? Why is this happening? And they start asking those questions, and then they start problem solving around it. So that's how you get forward movement or progress, in a sense, is through curiosity. Yeah.
Well, these two words, curiosity and compassion, were the two words that you kind of have thought about, mm-hmm. And got me thinking about when I read your blog on this one, just thinking about it even more. Mm-hmm. And thinking about, like, when you first said compassion and curiosity, I was trying to understand it and connect the two in a relationship, right? So, like, I was like, well, how does that work exactly? And then, thinking about it a little bit more, because when you first said curiosity, I'm thinking, how do things work? Like, mm-hmm. Getting answers about things.
Right.
getting answers basically about how things work,
Yeah.
what it is and how it works, right? And I think,
which is one dimension of it, but
yeah. But then, thinking more relationally about it, like questions like, well, why do you feel this way?
Right.
Or,
Right.
what's causing that emotion, or
Right.
Those type of questions relationally,
Right.
can be very useful in communication, of course.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're kind of leading into the application of curiosity. So yes, it can be applied in systematic things. We notice a problem with a particular part of our business, and so we're curious about that, and then we'll investigate it, and we'll kind of get to the root cause. Maybe you have a medical issue, same deal. What's going on? I have this pain. Like right now, I have I've been having back pain for a good many months, almost years now. And I've been systematically going through trying to figure out what it is and making progress and that kind of thing. But you sort of figure out, you want to know what the root cause is. You don't want to just like eliminate or band-aid situations. A really curious person will get to the bottom of it, right? But when it comes to like relationally, and that's another application of curiosity, is saying, if someone's saying to you, I'm hurt by that, is asking, like taking that minute to be like, what happened there? Like, did I contribute to the hurt, and how did I contribute to that hurt? Or they're excited by something you did and you think, well, what did I do right in that scenario? So staying curious is really going to help you develop those relationships much more deeply, and it'll keep you growing the entire time, because it's just like a relationship's like a plant. It needs water, it needs sunlight, it needs attention, it needs the right circumstances, the right environment for it to grow. And when you're interacting with someone and they're staying in a curious posture about making sure that they like check themselves, in the right way, like, am I doing this correctly? Or maybe I need to back up a little bit here and rethink how I'm handling this. Then you're in a great space, I think. Yeah.
I feel like in the pursuit of how things work, curiosity doesn't necessarily require any compassion, but I feel like maybe relationally, curiosity actually requires a little bit of compassion. Like, you want to have the two together.
Yes.
But I think it actually almost requires it a little bit. Like, if you're coming to me about something that's bothering you, and I'm open to it and curious about it, it's because I'm showing a level of compassion naturally to express that curiosity.
It's an expression of the compassion. You're right. That's a neat way. It's almost curious compassion together.
So it's a level of humility, compassion that kind of almost leads to that curiosity a little bit. And you can have, like, I guess we're getting to compassion in a second, and we are sort of jumping ahead with how they combine together to create these really like a wonderful, like, symbiotic relationship in itself. Those two character traits move together really well and provide this complete package. But maybe we can jump into compassion itself a little bit. So what is compassion?
Compassion. Okay, so I looked this one up too to make sure I had a good definition. So, defined as concern for the feelings and misfortunes of others. So I think that's what we all kind of think of when we think of compassion. We think of with passion, with love, with care. The calm part of that word. I don't know if it's Latin or Greek, but it means, I think, with, basically. And then the word passion's inherent in that, and we think of love and concern, care, all those things. And it's something that I feel like with compassion, you can try to assess other people with, like, oh, they're being compassionate or they're not being compassionate. And especially right now, like, even in our culture, I feel like people are so quick to judge whether someone's being loving or caring or not. And it's snap judgments most of the time. We don't have the full picture. And so in reality, it's sort of hard to kind of quantify someone's level of compassion, but it's very easy to assess when you've felt the compassion from others. Like, we all know what that feels like, to have somebody shower compassion on us, to show a level of concern and feeling for our misfortune or our hurt or our sadness or whatever that is. Would you agree?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I think it's hard. I wouldn't want anyone to walk away from this conversation going, oh, they're not compassionate enough or they're not. But it is important when we apply it to ourselves to think, okay, I might be being curious. I might have a very curious mind, but am I coupling that with compassion and a care for others? You know? And if I am, it's just this amazing nurturing combination. So the way I like to think of compassion too is it's a refreshment. It's a refreshment of the soul. When someone's compassionate with you, your soul feels refreshed. You feel like the grime and the dirtiness and the whatever stink is on you from either someone else treating you badly or a bad situation at work or at home or anything. When you feel compassion from somebody else, it feels just like a nice, cool, just, water being poured over you, showering you with just that little bit of energy and that little bit of refreshment that's going to help you move past whatever you've experienced. Yeah.
Do you think everybody experiences that the same?
No, I don't know if they do. That's just my analogy for it. How do you experience compassion?
Well, I haven't really thought a whole lot about it, to be honest.
I'm putting you on the spot.
But yeah, as you were saying that, I was like, oh, what makes me feel that way?
Yeah.
And I don't know if it is compassion, like personally.
Yeah.
I actually tend to feel probably a little uncomfortable with that sometimes.
Oh, we can dig into that later.
Like praise or compassion,
yeah,
those kind of things sometimes make me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Not necessarily refreshed, but that's just me saying, I don't know that it would be the same for everybody.
Yeah.
But it's never like, I'm never going to be like, think negatively for somebody showing me compassion.
Sure.
Like, it's never a bad thing.
Sure, it's never a bad thing.
It's always a good thing.
Yeah.
But I think people may receive it a little differently.
And maybe it's important how it's delivered.
Yeah.
So when I say compassion,
grace for me is probably really refreshing. I don't know how they relate.
Yeah.
Like when somebody shows you grace, for a mistake or...
It's a form of compassion.
That's a form of compassion.
Yeah.
But that's,
Good
to
point.
me, that really relates.
Good point. So, and that probably sinks in with further conversations we might have about personality and different things. Like, like with compliments, like neither of us tend to feel super comfortable with like a lot of compliments. It feels overindulgent, or I don't know how I'd characterize it. But for some people, that is the compassion that they want. They want to feel complimented or acknowledged, or and compassion for me is just, I guess another way to define it would be understanding too. Just having like a level of understanding. That's another conversation. You could take that piece and take it, kind of dissect it a little bit more and figure out, what does that look like for me? Maybe that's good homework, kind of asking yourself, how can I show curiosity in the world? And how can I show compassion? And what does compassion look like for me?
Yeah.
How do I receive that? Those would be good questions to kind of look at.
Yeah, and I would say to you guys too, it's like you'll see a lot of our podcasts, there's like 2 words, this one's compassion and curiosity, but I think it is really important to do things like this on your own and just pick 2 words like that either relate or don't relate at all, and just kind of like sit with them a little bit, look up their definitions, think about how you relate in your life and make your own definition of them. And just kind of meditate or contemplate on these things a little bit. I think that's a really big part of growth, sometimes. Because when you do that, you kind of, you kind of start to own the words a little bit, you know what I mean, in your spirit.
Yeah.
So I know, like, even just doing these podcasts helps me to do that more often, because we're thinking about these different words and things that we're going to speak on.
Yes.
And I think it's a really important part of your personal growth journey.
Yes.
And then also it starts to build your awareness. And thinking about how does this relate in community and socially and all that stuff.
And you're showing a level of curiosity by digging into these words. Yeah. And there's a great application, just taking anything in your life and just sitting with it for a little bit and asking, what's going well with this? What's not going well? How can I improve? Where can I go next? What's my next right step with this? And you may have to ask others around you, how am I doing with this, right? And that's risky. Like I said, curiosity involves risk too.
Yeah.
And then you hope. And one example I want to go back to with compassion too is, like, if we're applying those with mentoring or parenting or training up in the workplace, anything like that, it would be very hard for me to ask of those mentees or those children to do something that I'm not modeling myself. I can ask it. I don't know that I'll get the right response if I'm not first showing those things and modeling it for them. So if like with our kids, if one sibling is fighting with the other or, talking down to them or something like that, and I turn to them and say in a mean tone, why are you doing that? Is that really modeling what I want to be modeling?
Right.
No, it really isn't. And so I had an experience, this is like a live example, but I had an experience with one of our children yesterday actually. And they were participating in a school event. And I didn't feel like they were doing their best with it. There's a little bit of attitude. And so I wanted to kind of like come down on them a little bit, afterwards. Like, I wanted to say, why did you do that? Why weren't you doing this? That's what I wanted to say. Yeah. And instead, I drew on our coaching and I drew on what I know about curiosity, and I asked the question, how do you think you did with that? I mean, an immediate answer came forth. Yeah. I didn't do very well with that. I didn't have to say anything, I didn't have to say, you didn't do well with that. I didn't have to judge or make an assessment. I just asked, how do you think you did with that? And I said it just like that, in that tone. And they immediately said, no, I didn't do that well. I could have done better. Yeah. And I said, okay, well, let's talk about why you didn't do well. What was going on with that? Were you afraid? Were you this, were you that? And I was able to process with them. The whole thing took maybe 5 to 10 minutes. And I feel pretty confident that next time that event comes up, they're going to be able to work through it better. Yeah. It may take 5, 10 more events. I don't know. It just depends on the person and how the experience goes. But it was so much easier for me to just kind of inquisitively ask. Because for all I know, there could have been something way deeper than just, hey, I have an attitude. In fact, there almost always is, right? Yeah. So that was a way to apply it. In a day-to-day situation that worked out. I thought it worked out well for them and for me. I didn't have to feel like I was the heavy. Yeah, I would say the coaching process, is basically a process of curiosity. I mean, it's asking and it's getting people to self-evaluate. Yes. It's kind of giving somebody else curiosity. Yes, right. That's kind of what gift. I see it as, right? It's giving somebody the gift of curiosity, which generally is going to lead to self-evaluation when it comes to goals and achievements or personal growth. Yeah. Asking the right questions and getting you to evaluate and come up with your own answers because nobody knows you as good as you do. That's right. So, that's right. Yeah. That's kind of what it's about. Yeah. And someone just holding that space next to you to give you a chance to ask the questions, and reflect back how you're answering. That's the way coaching works. And it's a really beautiful thing. And you end up, the analogy sort of for the coaching is you're walking up a mountain. As you grow and you become more curious, you're walking up a mountain, and from that top point that you get to, you get a much better view of what's really going on, right? Yeah. So you're building awareness of your surroundings, and the view from up top is way better than from the bottom, I would say. For sure. So to wrap it up, how do curiosity and compassion, you said they're like symbiotic. What do you mean? Yeah, I mean, like, I think of them sort of yin and yang. Like, they connect together really well. There's one's a little bit more inward and more nurturing. That's the compassionate piece. And then the curiosity is expansive and it's outward, and it takes a little bit more risk. So that combination together, when we develop those character traits in ourselves, I think we really become a much better version of ourselves. We're able to serve others in a way that most people will receive well, and we're able to give in a way that feels refreshing, both to the receiver and to the giver. It feels like I've offered this really nice gift to someone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some people are naturally more curious people, or naturally more compassionate people.
True.
So you guys want to ask yourselves, are you naturally curious? Are you naturally compassionate? And if not, it doesn't mean you still can't practice these things. So you can ask yourself, am I practicing curiosity? Am I practicing compassion? And how do I practice curiosity and compassion? In relationship, socially, but then in other areas of your life as well. These things are, especially curiosity, can take you pretty far into,
Yeah.
All right, you guys. Well, that wraps up episode 8, Compassion and Curiosity. Thanks for joining us.
Tongue twister.
And until then, keep closing the gap between where you are and where you want to be.